this whole C4 thing started because I worked at a train station. One of the scope of works at this train station was that I needed to clean the toilets, the platform, the entrance sort of ticket area and stuff like that, and I hated it. But because the station I was working at was so quiet, they added it to the scope because, you know, there wasn't much trains going back and forth. It was only 2 platforms, so it made sense to get the platform attendants to do some of the cleaning as well. And because I was so bored, I started taking the cleaning so seriously, I ended up doing more cleaning than I was actually dispatching trains. And then I essentially got the sack from working at the train station, but I did acquire a new skill of being quite pedantic on how I was cleaning. When I was dismissed from my role as a platform attendant, I took the skills that I had, which was being an estate agent for about 4 years, selling properties, and knowing how to clean to a decent standard. I wouldn't say amazing standard, but I'd say to a decent standard. And I paired those skills together and I said, I'm going to set up my own cleaning company. And I'm going to reach out to some estate agents, see if we can clean some empty properties. And that is essentially how C4 was born. Yeah. So yeah, I had a bit of savings and I bought a van. I bought some sponges, some basic cleaning supplies, vacuum, you know, your traditional stuff that you kind of do domestic cleaning with. And yeah, I went out to a few estate agents, a few people that I knew, and I said, look, you know, I'm starting a new business. This is something that I really want to do. And can you support me on my journey? And yeah, there was a few people who was really, really helpful and support me in that journey. I mean, one of the main things as well was why I wanted to do a sort of essentially a low paying role, but make it a success, is because at my time of working at the train station, I was not acknowledged as a human being for months. You know, the passengers would just walk past you, wouldn't even acknowledge you. You say good morning to them, they would think you're weird. You know, it's the same passengers coming in on and off these trains every day. And it was just a lack of acknowledgement, a lack of interest. And I'm generally quite a proud person. I'm a kind person. And I just didn't like how it felt. So I thought, you know, when I do set C4 up, one of my things is that I want to make sure that I'm recognized. Even though I'm just a cleaner, I want to be recognized as a good cleaner, a good business person, a good person that who wants to do good business with. And I think that was just always in the forefront of my brain, of that, not just being a cleaning company, but being a cleaning company with some integrity, you know, some sort of recognition. We're going back maybe like 2010, 2011 was when I made that jump for me to set up my own business. I had low responsibilities, no children, no partner. So the risks were relatively low if it wasn't going to work. You know, I still was 22 at the time, 23 at the time, I think. The jump from there to where we are now, it's massive, it's huge. It's something I could never have even imagined to happen. I didn't know that C4 would become what it is now. I didn't know that we would be working in environments that we're in, what we're in now. The conversations, the meetings I have with people, the corporate spaces I work in, the data halls I work in, you know, the very complex conversations that I have, tenders, proposals, risk assessments, all of this stuff is just, it was not even a thought of when I sort of started C4 with my bucket, my vacuum, and my mop and cloths now. So from a commercial cleaning, so you'll find, especially in the UK and London, there is hundreds and thousands of commercial cleaning companies who provide office cleaning, public sector cleaning, schools, libraries, do general sort of high footfall areas, and there's lots of cleaning companies what deliver that service. So C4 used to be one of them. We did, and it's quite difficult for you to fight in those type of spaces because it's heavily saturated. There's a lot of companies what are delivering what you're doing, and most people who are procuring those services are just looking for the bottom line. How cheap can you do it? And why are you different from the other companies? And truth be told, I don't think there is much. I think there's a degree of luck involved. You know, you could be someone who's left a relationship with a cleaning supplier on a bad note and you just turned up at the right time, you know. And from a service delivery perspective, it kind of comes down to the person, the operative at the time. You might have a great operative, you might have a really bad operative, and then you kind of need to manage the quality of that person. And it becomes very difficult for you to do that in such a huge mass. That's the reason why we moved into working in a more of a specialist environment, because it's not as saturated. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of cleaning providers who do work in the data center space, but there's less. There's not a lot of them that self-deliver the services that what C4 does as well. So we made that move to move into the data center space, not by choice, it was actually by fortune. You know, we was working in the data center commercially, and we was just doing their circulation areas, their communal spaces and stuff like that. And we was providing a great service, and we was invited to a tender for the UK contract of delivering their cleaning services, and we were successful in that, you know. And then we realized that delivering to the data center space is completely different than delivering to your general office commercial space. Their requirements are different, their needs are different, their speed is different, their compliance is different, their margins are different, their eagerness for delivery is different. Because when it comes to data center space, when it comes to data centers, they need things to be done. It's not like, well, maybe, and you know what, it's something that we can look at. If they need something done, they need something done. And we started to realize that culturally, that space is completely different to your average sort of commercial cleaning space or your commercial office spaces and stuff like that. We really leaned into it. Our team really leaned into it. Our team grew, and we started to understand more about why they wanted it to be done like that. We started to understand, even down to things to shift patterns, engineer shift patterns. You know, you need to understand why you should be delivering a service at a particular time. You know, if you deliver it at a particular time, that means that there could be a shift change from engineers. So then that can hold up your services, especially if you're doing any critical services. And that means that the person who's going to be, you know, signing off your permits or reviewing your RAMs and stuff like that, if you're not aligned with what that time shift pattern of those engineers, then that can delay what you're doing. And there's so many elements and dynamics in delivering to the DC space versus delivering commercially. That was the reason why we leaned into it. It fitted my personality better because I wanted to deliver in a space where we could be more of an asset than just another supplier that could be swapped out because there's a new manager who's come in or they're just trying to save money or whatever it is. Still happens, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but from a risk element, it's reduced. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of compliance what needs to be done before you go into a data center. So if we use a comparison of, I don't know, cleaning a insurance office or a large sort of corporate office versus cleaning into a data center, there's a lot of compliance involved. Firstly, you need to make sure that your staff are trained. You need to be able to evidence that training. And that training needs to be, for us, in a centralized point location where our client has access to it. Secondly, you need to make sure that you're raising access for you to get into data centers. You can't just turn up. Whereas other commercial cleaning companies, if they're working in another environment, someone could be off or somebody is called in sick and they can just switch around. It doesn't work like that here. You need to be able to raise access. You need to make sure that you're raising access in the appropriate time. You need to make sure that the access has been followed up. You need to make sure that the scope of works has been communicated to your operatives. You need to make sure that your RAMs are tight. You know, most of the time you'll send a set of RAMs off and 90% of the time they're going to send it back and say, we need this to be changed, we need that to be changed, or, you know, we would prefer if the RAMs communicate this or communicate that. You've got to be sharp. You've got to be on it. You know, that's not something that you can just leave for a couple of days. You've got to be sharp. You've got to be on it. You know, so there's a lot of heavy lifting what needs to be done before any operational cleaning work is done. Then you're on site. And then you need to be inducted. If you haven't been inducted before, you need to be inducted on the site. You need to go through your permits of what you're going to be doing. You need to be speaking to whoever the shift engineer is or the data center manager is, depending on what your relationship is like with them. If you've got quite a cold relationship, you need to be explaining to them what you're going to be doing. You need to be looking at operational times, times that you can work, times that you can't work, if it needs to be out of hours, if it can be working within during hours, what is the impact, what is the risk. There's a lot of elements what needs to be done before any operational critical cleaning or commercial cleaning can be done in the data center. I sell C4 services the way how I would procure services. And I like to feel important. So if someone was to sell me, I don't know, let's say they was to sell me that BMW, which is outside, yeah, and I feel like they've given me their specific time in going through the details of the vehicle, going through the previous owners, going through all the features on the vehicle, going through why this vehicle retains value versus why it doesn't, why does this vehicle perform better than that vehicle, blah, blah. Instead of kind of just walking into a showroom, I like personal experiences. And I feel like C4 is a very personal brand. You know, if you speak to any of our clients, it'd be very difficult for you to find a client who doesn't feel like they are not personally looked after by C4. So I think what makes us different is, one, we self-deliver a lot of our services. We're not one of these sort of massive global companies who have huge amounts of turnover and use their leverage for them to subcontract loads of different works to smaller businesses. We take accountability and we self-deliver a lot of our services. And on top of that, we have this really personal human touch, you know, where a lot of the data center managers, or if it's channel work and we're working with people like Sebra, Rio, JLL, whoever that may be, they just give us a call. You know, it's not this system where, you know, an email goes through and then an automated email comes back out and then, no, you need to speak to this division, or you need to be, like, we remove all those sort of like extended processes and just speak straight to a decision maker, someone who can get something done. Because 9 times out of 10, when someone in the data center gives you a call because they need something done, it's because they need something done. It's not something that, you know, they want to think about, or, you know, we're gonna revisit it in a couple of weeks. If they've called you or they've emailed you, it's because they need something done quickly and effectively. And I think that makes us different, because when you're working with large businesses, which is no fault of their own, you know, size does come with more layers of communication. You know, so you want to kind of make sure that you're in the middle. You don't want to be too small where you can't deliver, but you also don't want to be too big where, you know, everything becomes a little bit longer than necessary. So, like I said, I think what makes us different is we self-deliver and our personal touch. So one of the things that I said at the beginning was about that sort of acknowledgement of being valued as a human being. and being acknowledged as not just a non-playing person in a video game. You know, it's about everybody as an individual, and I kind of said that from the beginning, that it is really important because I've come from an environment where that was happening to me. So we do small things which compound into being big things within the business. So even when we're recruiting and we take somebody on, we have a system which is a software that all our operatives have got their own personal profiles to, and everybody it's an inclusive software. So it's like a sort of mini Facebook sort of thing where we do feeds on there and we put up announcements. So if the weather's really, really hot, we'll say, look, guys, make sure everyone stays hydrated. If you're working in an environment where you know it could be particularly hot, make sure you stay hydrated. And we'll do sort of loads of different announcements. There's a crash on the M25, mobile division, please be careful if you're using the M25, blah, blah, blah. And like we have these sort of like small little things that we do, which I think compounds over time. Even when someone starts, they get a welcome pack. You know, we make sure that they've got C4 branded water flasks, umbrellas, a bag, pens, notepad, stress ball. Everyone's going to need a stress ball. And then we put their birthdays on our softwares. So then when we're doing our announcements and it's somebody's birthday, we make sure we've got a picture of them. We do an announcement. It's Courtney Chambers' birthday today. And then you'll be surprised by how many cleaning operatives just wish this person happy birthday, send a comment. And most of our cleaning operatives haven't even met each other. You know, there might be 5 operatives on that data center. It could be 2 operatives on that data center. It could be 10 operatives on that data center. So a lot of them don't actually get to meet each other unless it's like a Christmas party or something like that. But they all acknowledge each other through our softwares. And it's sort of small little increments like that, you know, making sure they've got welcome bags, making sure they've got birthday announcements, you know. If they've gone on annual leave, how was your holiday? We put up a lot of quizzes and competitions as well. And we like to give out sort of cash prizes and stuff like that. They are not just a national insurance number which generates a margin for C4. They are individuals who have all got families, who have all got lives, who have all got personal issues. They've all got goals and drives, and we look at them individually as people. And that was one of the main things that was missing when I was working at the train station, because I just felt like a battery number. And no matter how big C4 gets, that culture is always going to be within the business.